Welcome back to the GreenLight Investor for the week ending December 11th, 2015. Our goal at the GreenLight Investor is to provide a resource to make managing your 401k both a simple and easy process. We do this by using a simple worksheet that uses red, green, and yellow cells to help you decide when to buy, what to buy, and when to sell. This presentation is for educational purposes only and should not be taken as personal investment advice. The examples I'll be showing are exactly that. They're examples of how you can use this worksheet as an additional resource to help you make investment choices within your 401k. Always refer to your own investment policy to make certain that the choices you make are appropriate for your investment time horizon, as well as your understanding and acceptance for taking risk in financial markets. Let's go ahead and take a look at our worksheet. On the left side, you'll see that we start out with the investment choices. The different column headings include the fund number, the symbol, the fund name, and a brief description of the fund. In the center of the worksheet, we track the performance for the year 2015. This will include the closing price of the fund, the month to date, quarter to date, and year to date returns for each of the funds available to you. We feel this is important so you can keep track on a week-over-week basis of how your funds are doing on a relative basis to other funds available to you within your 401k. And finally, on the left side of, or on the right side of this worksheet, we'll see the current weekly trend scores. This is centered around three different columns. Column U, which is the long-term trend. Column V, which is the relative strength trend on a week-over-week basis. And column W, and to the right, are the cumulative scores of the relative strength trends for each week of the year. We'll center this around column V, which will show you the bright green light, the bright red light. And the way these work is on a week-over-week basis, we'll show you which funds have been the strongest and which ones have been the weakest in each of the categories. Here you can see that the inflation-protected securities were the strongest because they show a bright green light, and the international stock fund has been the weakest, showing the bright red light. To the right of this, we'll track the relative strength trend. When you're seeing red, it's showing that it generally has a negative or weak trend. And when you're seeing green lights, you'll see that it's generally positive, having a positive trend. One of the unique features also of looking at this on a week-over-week basis is the numerical value that we assign. You can see whether the trend is strengthening or weakening for each of the funds. And if you go back several weeks, it gives you a good picture of whether the funds are strengthening or weakening. It's an extra tool you can use when making your investment fund choices. As you scroll down the worksheet, you'll see again, column U is our long-term trend, so we like to look at that. That's an important column to see. We tend to try to stay out of the bearish funds and stay in the bullish or neutral funds. On the right side, we'll see that the fixed income, we're seeing a lot of red, so we've stayed away from that. Generally seeing a lot of weakness in the fixed income. The growth in income, we've seen a mixture of these, but generally because of the amount of red, we've stayed out of that. And we're generally in the long-term trend seeing a bearish or neutral, so we try to stay in the green or bullish categories. When we look at the U.S. stocks, we're seeing that we transitioned from a very red environment to a mixed, generally green, and now we're starting to transition back to a mixed to red color. On the long-term trends, we're also seeing primarily neutral with a little bit of bearishness overshadowing just a couple of bullish trends. So again, it's time to be cautious in the market. As we go to the international funds, we see that we've had very red trend or negative trend going. We did try for about 3 weeks here to transition to green, but again, we're seeing that we're having a generally red or bearish trend starting to develop again. On the short-term column, column S, we're seeing that we have transitioned to a very bearish In the long-term trend in the international funds, we're generally seeing a very bearish trend. So it's a good time to take a look at this and see if you want this much exposure to the negative trend. And finally, as we go down to the sector funds, we're seeing that we transitioned from a mixture of red and green to a strong green trend, and now we're starting to transition back to a mixture of red and green. The long-term trend is generally neutral with just a little bit of a mixture of red and green. So we're seeing again a very neutral trend. The highlight here is that again we're seeing a very sharp short-term trend that's bearish, so that may give you a little bit of a warning of something happening further, or it may just be a short-term trend. You never know until it is actually done. This helps give you some early warning signals as we are seeing some weakness in the relative strength. As you can see by the numerical values getting weaker for at least 3 weeks in most of these funds. So it's a good heads up, and if there's any adjustments to be made, this is a good chance to take a look at your portfolio as you go into the end of the year. Let's go ahead and see how we can use this information to actually make choices within your 401k. We'll do this by clicking on the worksheet, the View, Custom Views, and we'll go to My Current Allocation. When you click Show, it'll show you how your funds are currently allocated. And again, this is an Excel worksheet, so you have to put in the funds yourself. And what that does is it will keep track of how you're allocated, but the actual choices you make and the changes you make within your 401k have to be done on your company investment plan site. And then what you do is you come back and keep track of them here with a simple addition or subtraction of the funds that need to be changed. To take a look at your funds, you'll use the slider. Just move it over to the right, and then you can see the long-term trend column as well as the week-over-week trend and see if there's any changes that need to be made. Right now our index funds, we have an allocation of 10% to index funds, and we're currently 10% invested here. We're showing neutral with a shift to 1 red light. Generally, I like to see 2 in a row before we shift, so we're going to give this 1 more week to see how this works. If we see another red light appear, as we do down here, as we see in international funds, we'll move this back to cash, especially if this turns bearish. So for right now, though, we're seeing that there's nothing that needs to be done. We keep 10% available in the money market generally. Sometimes it'll go higher if the markets are getting weak, and that's a holding place for cash when markets are showing general weakness. On the right side, we've seen a lot of red as well as all bearish trends down the fixed income funds. So with that showing, we're going to go ahead and just stay out of that. The growth and income funds here, we're showing a 0% allocation. And again, we're seeing more red come in as we see the numerical values and the red cells are turning negative. Down the long-term trend, we're seeing a neutral trend with a slightly bearish bias to it. As we scroll down, we'll see our U.S. equity fund allocation is 30%. We currently have 20% invested here. We're still showing a bullish long-term trend and 2 bullish signals here. But again, we're seeing that the funds in general are showing weakness. As you look at the numerical values, are going from a 455 to a 3.10 to a 2.27. So we're seeing general weakness in the numerical values, and that gives you a little bit of a heads up that the funds in general are underperforming or they're getting weaker. As these turn red, we'll want to make sure that we're not involved or staying involved in any of the red funds. The next fund we have in the U.S. equities, we're looking at this. It has turned bearish, and what we'll do is we'll look and see when we see a confirmation. If this turns red, we'll move this over to the money market or possibly find another fund that is turning green. And again, you're seeing the same trend that we've seen some weakness in the numerical values in these, as well as continuation and an addition of red cells starting to show up. So we're seeing weakness in the U.S. equity funds. The international funds, we have a 30% allocation. We're currently allocated 30% to this one fund. It's showing a bullish trend, and we've got 2 green cells. So we're okay to stay here. For a more cautious investor, you would see all this red starting to show up, so it may be a chance to move some or all of this over to the money market with anticipation that this may start to turn red along with all of the other funds. This has been an unusual fund in that it's performed quite well this year, so the fund managers have done very well. But again, when the markets get weak, even the best fund managers can have a hard time. And let's continue down to our sector funds. We're seeing that we have an allocation of 20% to the sector funds. We're showing that there's a 10% and a 10% allocation to these two funds. Here we've shifted to a neutral bias on the long-term trend with one red cell. So let's give this one more week. If we turn red for 2 weeks in a row, we'll be moving this capital back to a money market or another fund that is performing stronger. Our last fund that we look at, we have a neutral bias, and we still have a green cell, so we're okay. But the same scenarios, we are seeing quite a bit of weakness. Even though we are showing green, we're seeing the numerical values get weaker on a week-over-week basis. So this is an early warning that the funds are showing general weakness and may transition to a neutral or bearish bias. With that said, let's go ahead and shift back to our home page. We're seeing that there's no real changes, but we do have some flags up this week to be aware of. If you're concerned, you can look at this on a weekly basis and make your choices. And otherwise, you can wait until next weekend's report and see how the bias is, and then make changes the following Monday on your company website. Let's go ahead and click back to our home page, which will show with the performance columns. Click show, and it takes us back. That's what I've got for this week. If you'd like to get a copy of this worksheet, you can go to the greenlightinvestor.org and download this for yourself, or you can give me an email. Send me an email at the email shown here, and I'll be happy to put you on the distribution list and send you a copy of this report on a weekly basis, so you can take your leisure to review and see if there's any changes to be made. That's what I've got for this week. I hope it's been helpful and gives you some ideas and resources to make fund choices within your 401k. And please feel free to reach out to me if you have any questions. I'd be happy to help. Thank you again for watching, and have a great weekend.